Hello, this is Greg Smalley on Pod 366, joined today, as I often am, by Giles Edwards.
Hello.
My screen's mirrored, so if I point this way, it probably shows me pointing away from you, which is why I always do.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Um, and later today, we will be joined by Zeb Haradon. Uh, Actually, maybe earlier today. I don't know. We're in a weird kind of time continuum thing. The rules of time and space have all been changed for this episode.
No.
But I do predict Zeb is going to talk about his entirely AI created movie, Eternal Recurrence. I think that's a fair prediction. But
Yeah.
I'll go out on a limb and I'm going to predict, even though he lives in Seattle, he's going to claim his hometown is Corning, New York.
Known for a place of eating and a glass manufacturer and museum, in case you're ever, for some reason, in the middle of New York State and looking for something to do.
So that's just my prediction for how the interview is going to go. Other than that, I think it's going to be a great interview. And I hope, like Russia didn't invade Alaska while we were recording that interview earlier, and we don't reference it, and everybody wonders why. So, if you,
That would be something.
yeah. But instead, we're going to go through the week's strange releases, and of course, they are a strange and odd bunch this week, as always. And I'm going to put some stills up, and we're going to start by talking about Slamdance.
Hey.
Giles has virtual access to the Slamdance film slate, which, in case you need a refresher, is the sort of alternative to Sundance that is actually in Park City and runs at the same time, but features lower budget and often stranger little films.
Yes. I'll
Giles,
go one further. I'll call it the cool alternative to Sundance.
and so, although we're not cool enough to go there, I'm sure they'd let us
Oh,
in.
they let us in. It's just Park City, Utah. That's an entirely different state. Whereas Montreal, that's just north of my, hometown.
And I have heard that, with two film festivals going there and it's a little tiny town,
Oh yeah, lodging.
lodging is exorbitant and hard to come by. So we're just happy to be doing it virtually. But Josh, Giles, will you talk briefly? I know you've seen like three or four films.
Mhm.
You've seen, I think, three that you're going to recommend already.
Yeah.
Why don't you just briefly go through those and the still we have here, this lovely still of a car about to fall on a gentleman who's standing there very complacently in front
Very
of
nice.
a villa. Uh, Tell
Yeah.
us what that is.
Well, we've described this still, and this still is from the new Dort, I think, the new motion picture, The Complex Forms, which I had the pleasure of watching slightly early, having been gotten in touch with the filmmaker. And this is a surreal kind of dreamy oddity that does take place primarily in a very nice villa and involves some really cool looking entities from the surrounding woods that dominate the left and right hand side of this particular image, which I'm not going to really give much away telling you that this isn't happening in the reality of the film, or is it? A couple other titles I saw. Love and Work was a very charming, breezy dystopian comedy, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And earlier today, I watched the latest Plimpton animation and have been writing upon that. So this was, I'm only a little over halfway through the features that caught our eyes. So all told, this was a pretty good crop this year. Previous slam dances, we found perhaps like one or two, but this we got a solid half dozen good leads, and three of them have come, I'd say have hit Apocrypha candidacy. So it's been a delight to watch those.
And I will say of the three you mentioned and have run through, I think sometimes it's a little bit of a problem with Slamdance because these films don't always get picked up for distribution. It can be
Yeah.
hit or miss. I think all three of these have a very good chance. The Complex Form is from Italy and it had already been released over there.
Mm.
So it's probably going to get this distribution in some form. And the Love and Work, the guy who made that, do you remember his name, Giles?
Peter O's,
Oh,
OHS is the last
yeah.
name.
His previous movie was at Slamdance, and it found limited distribution. So, and also Love and Work is, you're not the only one who enjoyed that. I've seen reviews and it seems to be very well received by everyone. So I have a great feeling about that one. And then Bill Plimpton, he'll release, because he's Bill Plimpton, he'll release whatever he has, whether he has a,
Yeah.
distributor or not, he'll find a way to get that out. So that will be all three of those. I predict people will be able to see later in the year, which is good.
Yeah. So
But speaking of things that people will be able to see and maybe uh, have seen, probably not, but this is your chance to see it. It's Hundreds of Beavers, Great Lakes Roadshow. So Hundreds of Beavers is a film we have talked about a lot. Giles Edwards and L. Rob Hubbard have seen it and both raved about it. Uh, L. Rob wrote the review and saw it at a local film festival, Kansas City Film Festival, where
yeah.
he talked to the makers. Giles also has already talked to the director and the screenwriter and producer and star and so forth. And it's actually getting a sort of roadshow release right now where they're taking it around mostly cities in the Midwest, although it goes to some other places. And Giles, describe it real quickly.
Well, it is a Guy Madden-esque zany madcap comedy that involves a young fur trapper's love and his attempts to win the daughter of the local merchant who demands for his blessing the pelts of hundreds of beavers. It is probably the closest to a live action Looney Tunes style I've seen, and just endless sight gags, unspoken but not silent, and a mountain of fun, as I was reminded when I saw it for a third time this past Tuesday at a Proctor's independent theater nearby. So it has held up over 3 viewings so far.
Oh, and I have a screener I was going to send you. So, so if you want to see it a fourth time,
I
so in case anybody is not watching on YouTube, do you want to describe the little poster we see here and whether
Oh yeah, this is a throwback to the sort of the madcap genre. I'm gonna guess what the late 60s into early 70s. In the foreground, heading away from the rest of the poster and toward us is a troubled-looking bearded gentleman with I'm gonna say a dead raccoon head on his head as a hat, and he's being pursued by hundreds of beavers who are armed in various ways, from knife to baton to rope, because they have their own reasons to try and kill this guy. And so yeah, it's a goofy little poster for a delightfully goofy movie.
or is this actually a scene from the film?
I mean, it might as well be. There's a things move along at a good clip, but the final bit has an extended sequence that involves a lot of different kinds of chasing, including one with just a sort of, swarm of beavers on foot.
Now, I don't know if you have it. Do you have their site up? I don't know that we want to go through all the cities it's going to and on what date. I would say people just go to follow the link on our site or the YouTube page to go and see where it's playing and hope you can catch it near you. in the next couple months. It will be then after it's finished this tour, this roadshow tour, it will be on VOD and physical media. We've been promised, and I'm pretty sure that they already have that ready to go. I'm not sure if it's Arrow distributing it or
Okay. Yeah, I got some dates here. So it's in select theaters nationwide. So the roadshow goes from the 26th through the 10th of February. So tomorrow through then, or today through then, excuse me. Then select theaters nationwide starting February 9th. Digitally available to buy and rent, streaming exclusive on Fandor, spring of 24, Blu-ray release, summer of 24. And golly, since it's January 26th, we're already practically at summer of 24. So, you know, it's going to be hitting us hard soon with its many hundreds of beavers. And yeah, there are a whole bunch of dates that I advise on the outside chance you might be in the Rust Belt or Midwest. They might be playing on the road show near you with live participation from the filmmakers.
And I should say, we're not the only ones who like it. We're not outliers because it
Oh,
actually
no.
currently has 100% positive on Rotten Tomatoes on a decent number of reviews, not like a number of reviews you get for a major Hollywood release, but it's there's probably more than 10. It's 100%. So, and mostly raves, not just lukewarm. So hundreds of beavers, something I've been looking forward to getting to see since you guys have been pumping it up so much. And I hope our listeners are also excited to see it.
It did get our much increasingly coveted must-see label, which we have been less generous with than in the past. So,
well, that's because we went through all the classics in the early days. Speaking of classics, so this one's getting a re-release. It's Giles, tell us what it is.
This it's a cover for an animated motion picture with vague grotesque edge to some vibrantly colored in trio of old ladies, which will be enough of a hint for some of you, and that I can't think of any other title off the top of my head that has to do with a trio of old ladies in an animated setting. This is the Sony Picture Classics edition of the Blu-ray for the Triplets of Belleville. And if I remember correctly, Sony Picture Classics sort of shoves things that they feel they ought to release but don't really want to add anything to on this sub-label of theirs, which is just as well because any given movie, if it's worth it, is worth on its own merits. And I apologize for the squeaking in the background. My cat has decided to socialize. So yes, for Blu-ray owners and fans of this very visually creative and occasionally, well, often surreal and occasionally, for me at least, a little kind of gross, but well within tolerances. Triplets of Belleville can now be had and probably looking about as good as anyone could hope it to.
So I just have to say this is a totally redundant release from anything I can gather. It was already on Blu-ray from Sony Pictures Classic.
Huh?
And now it's on Blu-ray again, and it's just a new listing that's popped up. I don't detect anything different about it. I think the only thing that's changed is they probably changed their sub-distributor, so they put it up again, and maybe it's new pressings. But once again, I think it's just a bare bones version of what was already out there. But you know, at least it's available, and we thought we should mention it. And maybe if somebody knows that there's something different about this release or unusual about it, let us know, because we don't know why it suddenly popped up again. Speaking of things that have popped up, this is a movie that I had never heard of before. And yet it's a film by John Frankenheimer, now on Blu-ray. Giles, the picture?
The picture is a sort of, I don't know, kind of like a chalk style version of a photograph of a dashingly sideburned gentleman holding the head of looks like a long-haired brunette woman resting her face in the crook by his shoulder, and they're kind of got their eyes closed at each other in an expression of supreme, I don't know, love, happiness kind of thing, done with a kind of cloud motif coming from it, radiating in a soft from the bottom to the top, yellow into a glorious orangey hue to, I guess, best as a picture capture that impossible object, which might be love or something.
So yeah, as I said, this is from 1973. It's John Frankenheimer, who did Manchurian Candidate most famously, and Seconds, and a lot of other movies that you might know and enjoy. But this one almost didn't even get a release. I never heard of it. It popped up on the Indicator label, so I went and looked it up. It was released in France. It played in France and barely played the United States. Kind of got just completely looked over. It is reputedly surreal from everything I can tell. It's about a writer who has an affair, but you don't know. There's ambiguity, as you don't know whether he's actually imagining this woman or whether he is really having an affair. And the woman is Dominique Sandra, who didn't do very many movies, but you might remember was in Steppenwolf at about the same as this.
This is Frankenheimer. Okay, I've actually seen more recent film from him.
Wait, you've seen this movie?
No, I haven't seen this movie. I'm just my brain is reconciling this movie and what I've read about it with some of these other titles I associate with the director. So it's yeah, a little not quite matching up yet, but people have all kinds of things they do over the course of a career. Because yeah, one of his more recent films was Reindeer Games, which is a movie I think everyone forgot about, starring Ben Affleck and Gary Sinise, and I happened to see in theaters, and so that's just an odd moment for me to tie those together as the same director. So that's all that reaction was there.
It was also called Story of a Love Story. And do you have the IMDb page up?
I can story of a love story, 1973.
If you go there and read like the top quote from the movie, you'll see that it is a little art house strange based on that quote. Do you see it?
Oh, I do see it. The line from Harry.
Yeah, I think it's one or two lines of read it out.
This was the time when I had been married half my life, and we lived in a foreign land, my wife and I and our sons, in a garden where we had everything we want. And God came down through the trees one day and scratched himself, as if someone had walked over his grave or trod on excrement. And God asked, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "I don't know."
So I don't know. Maybe I'm getting some Marion Bad vibes a little from that.
It's certainly odd. This seems
So yes, and it was just a movie that has been totally forgotten. No one's ever suggested it in our suggest a weird movie thing. I don't know that people have seen it yet. It's from a major director, so this is kind of I'm kind of hopeful that this is a lost classic that Indicator has come up with, and I guess they have connections in France. They released all the Roland movies.
Oh yeah. The other quote on IMDb from Natalie, then he came and sat beside me, and I felt something of all I loved him for, his darkness and his energy, which were inside me like a seahorse.
So yeah. So definitely very art house surreal type vibe, coming just from the limited dialogue that we and the limited reports we have from what Indicator says, and from IMDb, the one person who had seen it on IMDb and seemed to like it. Speaking of some more rare movies, here we have a still. I don't know what's going on, Giles. What do you?
Uh, well, we're in on whatever is going on, as this still has the only woman in the frame is looking straight at us through the camera lens. She has her arms around, and it's impossible to say whether she's being reassured or she's trying to reassure the distressed gentleman that is leaning into her, behind whom are a number of other distressed-looking gentlemen. There's an Asian flair of some variety to this. I wouldn't want to hazard to guess. And looks maybe like a crowded apartment scenario. And something just over my left shoulder is incredibly interesting or distressing.
Um, Jaws, but you know what it is?
I don't actually.
Didn't see it. Okay. You didn't check out the trailer
I
for
thought I had clicked everything. I thought I'd done all my homework, but I guess I omitted this.
it's Curse of the Dog God
Oh, okay.
from Japan.
Oh,
Uh, and that is a kimono she's wearing, and you can see kind of the traditional paper paper shawl in the background.
okay. That's yeah.
And, so yeah, this is a Mondo Macabro release of a Japanese exploitation movie that is described by those who've seen it as bizarre. If you watch the trailer, it gives off definitely, kind of a Mondo exploitation film vibe. Uh, if Mondo Macabro is releasing it, that probably does mean that it is going to have some strangeness to it, at least from a Western perspective.
Hmm.
Probably has vibes similar to one they released last year around this time, a haunted Turkish bathhouse, uh,
Okay.
which was sort of a pink movie mixed with a horror movie. This one appears to be a wall-to-wall occult horror movie about
Yeah, yeah.
God and
Looking at the summary here, it looks promising in that direction.
yeah. You can watch the trailer and see that it's very fast paced. I think people describe it as a bit incoherent, uh, probably not as much sex as in Turkish Bathhouse, which after all was set in a brothel, but I do there's a good amount of sex and violence. It's a movie for people who like exploitation movies, and we like them, and we like them when they're more incoherent, which this one uh, reputedly is. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a reach, not sure, don't know much about it, like a lot of these movies, but may be worth checking out. Speaking of things that, well, that's not worth checking out to me.
Oh gosh.
Uh,
Yes.
it is of interest to, a lot of people like Chantal Akerman and her movie. Pronounce it for me, Giles. You're French.
Oh, I will do my best. Her big hit.
Her big hit, yes. Big hit.
Jean Dillman, 23, Quai du Commerce, 1080, Bruxelles.
There you go. That's great French. Jean Dielman, as we'll refer to her, which of course is BFI Poll's #1 movie of all time, temporarily. And if you don't know what it is, well, it's a movie that goes on for about 8 hours of one scene repeated over and over and over of a housewife cutting vegetables, basically. Uh, for it really is only like 2.5 hours. It seems like 8 hours. And then the last scene is different.
Yeah, I don't envy whatever poor soul reviewed it for 366.
I
Ooh.
had a good time. Good time. Uh, But
Oh.
so Criterion is putting this out with nine, I believe it's nine of her other movies, of which the Rendezvous d'Anna is probably the only one anybody has heard of. Um, Looking them up there, some of them are shorts, experimental. All of them are minimalist in the same vein as Jean
Mhm.
Dielman. Um, I would not look forward to viewing these. Other people may feel differently.
Yeah, no, I know some, and yeah, a fella I've worked with creatively who's very good with, you know, gritty crime stuff is an absolute junkie for this kind of really slow core art house stuff. So
I don't mind slow cinema, and you know, but it's something. Jean Dielman is something I just enjoy as a concept. The concept, the idea of the repetition in the life of a housewife and how soul deadening it is. Uh, it's reflected in the form, you know, where punishingly
you
into
can
how
really
repetitive
feel it.
and mundane it is, so that you really, really, really experience the repetitiveness and mundanity. And so, as a concept explained, yeah, I get it. Wow, that form really explains, or informs the content and the message you're trying to get across. Not fun to watch. I don't understand people who enjoy watching it. Some people seem to enjoy looking for the little subtleties, the little subtle differences in the performance of Delphine Seyrig, who, of course, is very good in it. But two or three times of watching it through would have been enough for me. I think the short movie La Chambre is sort of similar to that, in that it's a shot that's repeated over and over with small variations. But that's a short, it only goes on for 10 minutes, which may be, a little more tolerable for something like that. Giles, did you ever see Jean Dielman?
No, although I think years ago before I worked with 366, that presuming the timing is right there, I can't quite remember when your review is from, but was reminded of, that. And I've seen a movie, yeah, that was 2012, so I probably saw that. But I'm reminded of my review and experience with the Bellatar film Damnation, which is a snip at 2 hours, but opens with this, I don't know, maybe 10 or more minute shot of elevated coal carriers going past. What we eventually learn from an incredibly slow pan backwards is a window. And it pans slowly back more, and we see, oh, we're looking over the shoulder of this guy who turns out to be the protagonist of sorts for this really slow moving thing. And I make my views on this phenomenon, which I imagine is similar in some ways, at least, repetition wise, to the Jean Dielman phenomenon, and that it's not what I'm looking for in a motion picture experience, but comments to my own review suggest, oh, there are people looking for that, and they are enjoying it, and I don't begrudge them.
No, and I did not enjoy Damnation at all, but I really enjoyed the Werkmeister harmonies, which is also by Bellatar, in the same vein. And I love Tarkovsky, which is slow, but
And increase, like, over the course of his career too, he just sort of started not really fast and then just almost hit stationary by his final movie, if I understand correctly.
the slow movies aren't a problem, but they,
Huh.
they can overcome that. But they're hit or miss. And Jean Dielman, it's didn't do it for me. Now, the movie we're about to review, coincidentally, is called The Eternal Recurrence, or not that we're about to review, but that we're about to discuss with
Yes.
Haradon. And so there is sort of a thematic idea there of eternal recurrence. It recurs in Jean Dielman having the same mundane technique, or same routine every day. And in the Eternal Recurrence, which we're about to see, the protagonist has a similar situation where the same routine occurs day after day. However, that's only a little tiny part of that movie, and it's broken up by most of it being depictions of the characters dreams.
I
And
was gonna, yeah, that makes me think we could probably gain some pretty fast notoriety if we coordinated on making a film about the dreams that Jean Dielman has in between these segments and just go, wherever we want to.
we can make them with AI. And
Oh man, yes. Post-fact Delphine Seyrig, I'm sure. Well, you studied law. I'm sure we'd have no issue with any studio or copyright coming at us.
yeah, so I predict that we will not discuss the relationship between the Eternal Recurrence and Jean Dielman with Zeb Haradon. I predict it's not going to come up.
No, I mean we've covered it.
But we will talk about AI and some of the ethical and legal ramifications of AI. I do think we will get into that, as
Yeah.
well as possibly what to do if you're hungry in Corning, New York. And with that, I think we should just call up Zeb and get him on here and see what he has to say about his movie. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. We've got this wrapped up. We got some more Slamdance coverage down the pipe. But yeah, let's get Zeb on the horn, and we'll see you all soon.
All right, let's do that. All right, talk to you soon. Bye. Hello, and we're back. Although since we're recording this segment first, we're not actually back, but we are back in your temporal reality with our guest Zeb Haradon, who is below me. Hi, Zeb.
Hi.
Director of well, you probably know him from Elevator Movie, and we're going to talk about his new movie, the entirely AI-generated The Eternal Recurrence today, and some other things. We'll mention some other things. Giles,
Hello.
with us again. And so I thought we'd just start off by going through your career, Zeb, and talk about Elevator Movie, because that is the one we've covered
Right.
extensively, and that's how I got to actually know you, by reaching out on Facebook for some quotes about Elevator Movie, which was a very low budget movie made in what year?
I
Oh,
shot it. I started shooting it in '99, and then I think it played in a festival in 2004. So it took a while, but you could say either one. I'd say '99, but
Okay. So it was made for very little money, just one set, which is an elevator, and the premise is that this sort of loser is trapped in an elevator with a woman who is now a Jesus freak, and is continually sexually frustrated. It's a very surrealist type of scenario, very much, I think, influenced by Buñuel, and
right.
and in general, I think all of your work seems to have at least an awareness of the surrealist movement to it, which is something that attracts me. Is that correct? You have a background, or just like Buñuel, or?
Yeah, I'd say Buñuel's probably one of my favorite directors. And let's see, I wrote this like right after I finished college, and I was making notes for it throughout college, and that's what I was watching then. I hope I had this idea right from the beginning. It would just be a movie about like people are just waiting for a thing that's never going to happen. So I was reading stuff like Waiting for Godot and No Exit and stuff like that to try to, see how other people thought of this idea. And
Yeah, I think No Exit came to mind when I watched it as well. So something I probably should ask about that is, well, it was the movie got good reviews in some places and got sort of a small cult reputation going, but is kind of unavailable right now.
right,
It was put out on DVD during the DVD era. It got onto Netflix when Netflix DVDs were a big thing. That got it a lot of exposure. but it has kind of disappeared since. And is that its fate, or is there a future for it?
At some point, I'll copy. I mean, all I have now, I have the film, the actual 16 millimeter reel sitting in storage, and then I have the DVDs. So at some point, I'll make the DVD into a file and put it up somewhere. But it might be a couple years before I do that.
Well, I just want to be sure that it will come out eventually and is not totally abandoned, because we do get questions about it a lot and how people can see it. And uh, I definitely would recommend anybody who's a weird movie fan or a fan of surrealism should check it out, because there are very few really surrealist works out there. You get one or two a year, and then, so it's kind of a rarity in that aspect. Okay, so after you finished that, you did a documentary, and it's Waiting for, and how do you pronounce it? Nasara?
Nasara, yeah.
That one you do have available on your YouTube channel, and I have
Right.
seen that, but that is a documentary about a cult movement in Utah. Would you like to just explain that one?
Yeah, so that it's hard to explain. It would be easy to explain if it was something we all understood, like if they were waiting for Jesus to come back, then I wouldn't need to give you all the background. But it's a kind of movement like that, basically. And what Nasara is they think that a secret law was passed by Bill Clinton, signed by Bill Clinton, and that it would just bring about this economic utopia somehow, and it ties into like September 11th conspiracy theories and reptilians and all this kind of stuff. And it kind of faded, but now it's um, people are interested in it again because it kind of is one of the things that gave birth to the QAnon conspiracy theory. So
Does it
again,
have some of the same players, or?
yeah, there was a guy who went to the meetings who I ended up not including in the movie because it seemed kind of peripheral to what the movie was about. But he was basically saying what exactly what QAnon is saying now, like elites are eating babies and all this stuff.
Oh, of course.
Those pesky elites. You're thinking of following up Nasara with insights on its current manifestation?
Uh, it's crossed my mind to write a book maybe about about making the movie and about what's happened since, but I don't know. I haven't really put a lot of thought into it. I think other people are have better resources to do that. It's like a global thing now. It's not
Yeah.
like a single group, so it's
So you were able to somehow get access to those people, the Nasara people, which might be more difficult to gain somebody's trust in the QAnon, where they're very paranoid about outsiders.
yeah. They were they were actually pretty open. Yeah, I mean they let anyone in. They kind of believed anything anyone told them. They believed in even conflicting conspiracy theories like the moon landing never happened, but then also there were aliens that were discovered on the moon when the moon landing happened. So that yeah, they just believe whatever. And yeah, they were paranoid about the government and stuff. They weren't really paranoid about individuals.
And I'm kind of guessing that's just something that just kind of fell into your lap because you sort of found these people and had access to them, because it seems like the documentary is kind of a diversion and from the rest of what you're doing.
Yeah, they were well, I worked on this with my ex-wife and it was her idea. Like I didn't want to do it at first. I thought it was stupid. But she had seen an ad in the back of some newspaper from some people saying they had videos of UFOs that they were going to show that they had shot. They had flown over the Olympic ceremonies in Utah, and they were meeting in the KFC on the corner, and it was actually the world's first KFC, which you would think would be in Kentucky, but it actually is in Utah for some reason. So yeah, I just went to their meetings and there were no UFO tapes, but they were talking about this Nasara thing, and we kind of picked it up from there.
All right. Yeah, I think I couldn't have resisted covering that if I'm not a documentarian, but I might have become one if I went to that meeting just and had that opportunity to talk to these people. And so anyway, but after that, I think pretty much you turned into writing novels,
Yeah, yeah.
which I've read one. I read The Usurper King.
Oh,
So
wow, I didn't know that.
um, was probably 2015, 2016, because it's very clearly referencing the Trump run for presidency, because
Right.
in that book, it's an alternate universe in where Ted Bundy is still a serial killer, but he runs for president, and the protagonist tries to stop him using fortune telling with entrails. And there are
Right.
a lot of other strange things involved in that one. But what are the other novels you've written?
I've written a couple. I think I've written, well, I read a trilogy and then I wrote like five, I think, in addition to that. So eight books total. The last one I just published is, I think I might actually make a movie out of it, like with these AI tools. Um, it's called The Disposable Soma. It's about a it's about a presidential election set far in the future, like 2160, and the guy chooses a parrot as his running mate. So, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on in it. Everyone's on drugs through the whole book. There's like 100 holidays a year, and politics is all about which holidays are going to be official federal holidays and which will be removed from the calendar. And um, yeah, it's just a strange book.
And we would expect nothing less, having seen the rest of it. And actually, when I read The Usurper King, it did seem sort of very cinematic at parts. You could see how it would be
Oh
adapted.
yeah, most of the stuff, most of the books I write are things that I would want to make into movies, but it's just really expensive. So I just wrote them as books instead. So yeah, The Usurper King, that was actually like several different ideas for different movies that I kind of tried to tie together into one plot. And you kind of feel that when you're reading it. It's kind of like a whole bunch of unrelated concepts kind of tied together.
Like a conspiracy.
Yeah, so before we get, so that brings us up pretty much up to the present. Before we get into that, Giles, did you have any questions about the previous career?
Actually, kind of just looking at your little about the author bio on Amazon here, I see it says you grew up in Corning, New York. I'm from Troy, New York, so I know all about the wonderful glassworks, and I guess there are other things there as well. And
Not
no, no, and interested in studied cognitive science at SUNY Buffalo. I knew some cog sci majors, and they were invariably differently minded people. I'm curious if there are any connections you might care to illuminate, if they exist, in your studies there and the fictional paths you've taken.
uh the philosophy side of cognitive science, maybe in my books a lot, because I talk a lot about like the philosophy of identity. That's
Mm,
kind of that's like you know, the Star Trek where there's two Rikers because he had
mm.
there's a transport accident. It's stuff like that. Philosophers who talk about scenarios like that. So I write about stuff like that a lot, and that's kind of peripherally related to cognitive science. And then well, this isn't exactly related, but I mean, cognitive science kind of is evolved was one of the things that evolved into machine learning, which is kind of the tools I'm using now
Mm.
for the new stuff I'm making. So.
Uh, I think that probably brings us up to the present. So we're going to talk about the movie, which is one of a very few existing. There's at least one and maybe two other feature-length movies that are made entirely with AI. It's the Eternal Recurrence. There are a lot of shorts made with AI, and we have links to a lot of them on the site that I'll do. But this is a full-length feature movie, although it is sort of a bunch of shorts also, but it's tied together with another narrative. So it's called the Eternal Recurrence. It's entirely made with AI. We're going to watch, I think we're going to be able to watch the credit sequence here in a moment. But before we do you have anything else to say by way of introduction about the Eternal Recurrence?
Introduction. I have things to say about it, but not a general introduction, I guess. So yeah, we can just play that, I guess.
Yeah, let me see if I can get this up. Now, I think it's not going to, do you see a blank screen?
It looks promising from here.
It's a blank.
Press play, and here it should go.
This is a film about dreams. As such, it is often violent, perverse, bizarre, and maybe sometimes even boring. More discretion is advised. This is a film about dreams. As such, it is often violent, perverse, bizarre, and maybe sometimes even boring. Viewer discretion is advised. This is a film about dreams. As such, it is often violent, perverse, bizarre, and maybe sometimes even boring. Viewer discretion is advised. This is a film about dreams. As such, it is often violent, perverse, bizarre. What if someday or night a demon were to steal after you into your loneliest loneliness and say to you, this life as you now live it, and have lived it, you will have to live once more, and innumerable times more. And there will be nothing new in it, but every gain and every joy and every thought and sigh and everything unutterably small or great in your life will have to return to you all in the same succession and sequence. Even this spider and this moonlight between the trees, and even this moment, and I myself. The eternal hourglass of existence is turned upside down again and again, and you with it, speck of dust. Would you not throw yourself down and gnash your teeth and curse the demon who spoke thus? Or how well disposed would you have to become to yourself and to light to crave nothing more fervently than this ultimate eternal confirmation and seal? Oh, you so want to be baby see this son.
So I hope that played for everybody. Uh, were you able to see? You were able to see it, correct?
I saw it, yeah.
I did notice one thing. I think maybe those the credits where they start to go one into the other in the different title styles was very similar to the opening of Guy Madden's The Forbidden Room.
Oh, is it? I
yeah.
saw that movie, yeah.
They do the sort of the same thing, only he has a different sort of aesthetic, with the silent film and the kind of the film like it's burning, and then there's another title card behind it. So that was kind of cool, but I guess that's just a common idea. And so, yeah, you see how things with AI in its very dreamlike way, they shift together and they morph from one thing to another. So with that opening, are those like a bunch of images that you developed during making the film that you didn't have another place for, so you put them together?
Some of them were. I got that idea from the Hawks and the Sparrows, the Pasolini movie. He sings the credits in the movie. There's no on-screen credits. It's just a song with like directed by Pirpa, and so I thought it'd be funny to sing the disclaimer. So I took anything I had that was like a throwaway that had a clear face in it, so I could sync the music to the lips, and then I just generated a couple more.
All right. And so let's discuss the process of there's going to be two parts. There's going to be the audio and the visual, but for the visual part, I'm pretty aware of how you would do it for an image, having played around with it, myself, with the free tools you can get on the internet. When you're having it produce something animated, do you have to do more work? What kind of prompts do you give to be able to produce a film like? sequence.
But if it's just a background shot, you can go right from text to video. So you'd use like Pika tools or Runway. Those are the tools I used. And you would just tell it, a park with children playing in the background or something. And then it'll generate you a 3-second video of that. And you have to roll it a couple times before you find something that works, but you can find something that way. If it's a character, especially if it's one that's been in another shot, so it needs to be consistent, then it's better to design it to generate it first in Midjourney or Dolly or something like that, and then bring it into one of the tools and do a video to image. And that does take longer because first you have to go through all the roles of generating the image, and then you have to do the in painting to fix the details, and then you have to bring it into the video and then roll it a couple times to get what you want there.
So how long, it sounds like it might be, although it's very cheap, it might actually be more time consuming than just putting a camera and shooting actors. Is that accurate?
Well, the editing takes about the same time, and then the writing takes about the same time. The actual shooting versus generating, I'd say the doing it with actors would probably take about twice as long. I got through, I think there's about 50-ish dreams in this movie, and I think I got through about one a day on average. So it took about 50 days. I think it'd probably take about twice that long to shoot with actors.
Okay. Giles, did you have any questions before I move on?
I was just listening to you explain the process because I'm obviously generally aware of the phenomenon, but this sounds like a heavy tilt into the more classical two-dimensional art of collage because you are grabbing from all different things, but it's not as if you're doing no work, I guess, is how I want to end that sentence.
It's like the Russian filmmakers in the 1920s, right? They were learning to make films during a war, so they didn't actually have any film. They'd have an assignment to make a 10-minute movie, but they'd only have a ration of 2 minutes of film, so they'd have to go find stock footage and figure out a way to suggest meaning through like, a fire truck and a Christmas tree and an explosion, and then 2 minutes to shoot what they want. So it's kind of like that, like, okay, I have this weird shot here, wait, I could tie it to this, and then it'll look like this is happening. So it's that kind of thinking.
And I left part of my own book question incomplete because I said there were two parts, there's the visual and the audio, and we didn't talk about the audio. So, I mean, I guess generally it just generates, and a lot of it, you feed the text in and a voice generates, and often it's kind of monotone, but at other times is that just the AI actually emoting just a little bit on its own?
Yeah, it's I used 11 Labs for that, and it's the same thing. You just have to roll it again and again and again. I found a trick, like if I wanted to say, I'll be right there, and I want it to say it in an angry tone, then I'll put at the beginning, shut the fuck up, I'll be right there, and then I'll just trim it out. But it somehow catches on the words that this is supposed to be angry, and then it reads the whole thing angry. So you can do stuff like that. Right as I was finishing like the last stream, the 11 Labs came out with a new feature that you can speak and record your voice and then have it play that same audio in a different voice. So I did a couple of lines like that, but they are near the end. There were a couple times when it came out like yelling, just screaming. And I always tried to find a place for that because it was so rare.
Oh yeah, you want those accidents, and that's, I think the whole thing is you're trying to generate accidents that you can then find a way to incorporate, which is sort of the very surrealist approach.
Yeah, that was a big part of this movie. Like because the tools do that, they just generate like completely weird random stuff. My favorite one was I I was generating a for something like that I ended up not even using. I was generating a beach scene, and it came up with this guy with all these scars on his back on the beach. He was like one of the sunbathers. So I in painted around him, and no matter what prompt I put, it would always come up with something like really gory and bloody. And so I used that in the sequence where the character gets shot. Like you see this weird guy in the background of all those shots with these scars on his back. Those are all images that were generated that way.
Just by accident. So the structure of it is it's a bunch of dreams, but in between the dreams, your protagonist Jim, I believe all your protagonists are named Jim.
Yeah.
He has just a regular boring corporate life, and that is depicted in a slightly different style, which I think was probably done for practical reasons, but has an effect. And again, it may be an accidental effect more than a commentary, which is this real life scenes are shown as a series of still pictures. And like each day he repeats almost exactly the same sequence of pictures repeats. And I guess that, that feeds into the title, the Eternal Recurrence. But so what I guess I'm wondering about all that was that originally part of the design, or is that something that arose later and you said, wow, this kind of feeds that idea?
Yeah, that was something in the original script. So the way I wrote this is first the dreams come from a dream journal that I had from like 93 up until 2007 when I wrote it. So I turned those into short movies, short scripts for short movies. I changed all the character names. So I reduced it to like 5 main characters when really the dreams were about all kinds of random people. And then I wrote those sequences in the middle. And yeah, so that was designed right from the beginning. The reason I did it as stills was one, to differentiate it from the dreams so that you can tell like that he's supposed to be awake. And also the character consistency is a lot easier to get with when nobody's moving around. In the dreams, I didn't really want consistent characters because it's more dreamlike. So that's kind of why these AI tools are suited for this kind of movie, I think. But for the waking segments, I didn't want people changing faces and stuff in the middle of the scene.
And I think, and when we interviewed Pat Tremblay did a book of fake movie posters that were all generated by AI that then people wrote fake reviews of. And when we talked about that, one of the things I pointed out is there's probably a very small window for people to use these tools in this way before they get too good and they're going to, deliver something that's not dreamlike or weird at
Yeah.
all. They're going to deliver something that's very bland and corporate.
That's what I was thinking at first, but I realized recently, well, first we can still use the old models, someone will have them available if people want them. And then it'll probably get to the point where you can train your own models and you can do all kinds of weird stuff if you're doing that. Do you know what I mean by train a model? Like you showed it pictures of your face and you say, this is me. And then you can reference that object in your generations. So when people can do that, yeah, I think if we'll have full control over it.
So there is something that I want to mention because people are going to comment or they have commented before, which is kind of the controversy about using AI. And it's actually, case going to the Supreme Court with Apple about the idea that when you're using AI, you're taking someone else's work because the models are trained on it. It's kind of like Google image dreaming, and it's taking other people's work, and then you're making something new from it, but they're not getting compensated. So did you have any thought of that at all when you were doing this, or do you see it as a different entirely?
I think it can occasionally generate an image that should be copyrighted or trademarked, and they got to find some solution to that because it really it's blurring line now between parody and then like original work. Someone could really make well, it won't be long before someone could make their own Star Wars movie, and it'll really just look like a Star Wars movie. So they got to figure out some legal framework around that. But as far as using it in training, no, I don't think that's stealing at all because it's like it's what we kind of do. It's what people have always, it's, you look at a movie and you see a shot you like and you say, okay, I'm going to use that shot in my movie. It's more like that. It's not like actually copying it. So I don't know. When I've seen these arguments, maybe someone will convince me if they can put a better argument together, but they're really just kind of, these models are just looking at the image and then just like setting some weights based on it. And then what's generated is not a copyrighted image based on that. So I'm not really too concerned about it ethically. I think it will change the way movies are made for sure, though. It'll disrupt everything.
I think it already has. I think people like Netflix, I believe, has used AI to create some backgrounds, crowd shots, and extras were complaining, hey, we don't get any work because you can just have a computer make fake people and put them
Right.
in.
One thing it will do for actors, though, I think it'll separate talent and looks because you need both to be an actor, right? But now a model can be an actor by just licensing their face, and the AI can do the acting, or a good actor can like just have their face overwritten if they don't look like they're what the director wants for the part.
Right, absolutely. I could become I'm not a great actor, but if I was a great actor, then I could have like Brad Pitt's face over me and do some good acting. Giles, some questions, if you have any.
Yeah, hang on, let me get rid of this cat, which has been trying to infiltrate the meeting for the past 30 minutes. Yeah, yeah, to me it's an interesting ethical or legal, it's legal certainly and ethical as well in regards to, taking all this, and I myself have an unresolved opinion about the matter. I kind of like the notion with your motion picture because in one of your interview, either on your website or some files you gave us, it's you want something that can record your dreams. Whereas this machine learning thing, as it stands presently, is kind of chronicling a societal level, or at least, whatever the data parameters are for it, level interpretation of this is what society is thinking about in daylight, in daytime, in periods of awakeness. And it's then spewing out something that has the very random feel of the dreamscape with guidance. I'll be interested to think, do you think there will be a point, and I'm not going to necessarily say genuine artificial intelligence, but that perhaps iterations could be set up for these things to start spewing out with some guidance its own thing. So like imagine your movie, but instead of you providing the parameters for any given scene, it kind of is, poked, like a domino poked, and it like will set up its own.
Like a one sentence prompt into a 2 hour movie, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that now. It wouldn't be a good movie, but there's a workflow that you could probably automate that would do that. And I think it won't be long before, I mean, I think within 10 years easy, we'll have things like that. I don't think it'll be a big thing culturally though. It'll be more like a game, maybe that more it'll become like a gamified thing rather than something that you would think of as a movie. Um, I don't know. I was thinking maybe what might happen is studios might create worlds and characters, and then they'll build them into these models, and then they'll release the models, and they'll leave the content creation up to the fans,
Hmm.
and then they can like upload their stuff to YouTube, and then all the franchise fees are just automatic as a percentage of the advertising. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it could. There's all kinds of new. But
Yeah,
we have no idea.
yeah, because I have had some brushes with fan fiction world, so I know there's a deep well of creative types who have their own imaginings of cultural icons, shall we say, that I
Yeah,
mean it would be interesting to see some of those brought to, audiovisual fruition there.
that's
Hey,
something. A lot of these. Oh, sorry. What?
go on.
Sorry.
Continue.
Oh, yeah. A lot of the when I watch these like tutorials on how to design characters in Midjourney and stuff, they're always using like Star Wars characters and stuff. And as far as I know, Disney has not gone after them for that. So, as the tools get better and better, I don't know what's going to happen if they'll have to somehow come to terms with that. And maybe they'll just work with the fans and let them do something like that.
I was just going to say, getting back to the Eternal Recurrence, and we are running a little short on time. So, but are you worried at all? Because these are your own personal dreams and certain things recur. Are you worried at all that people are going to psychoanalyze you and why so many donuts in the dreams or something like that?
Uh, yeah, maybe, but it's only I'd say about 75% dream. And I'm not going to tell people which 75%, but a lot of stuff came up when I was writing it that I changed. And I noticed a backstory emerging that had nothing to do with my life at all. And so I started kind of changing details to fit the backstory. So I'm not, I mean, there's stuff in there that's about me, but there's a lot that's not too. So like any movie, I guess.
Like any work of art. I mean, I've written works of fiction, and like you say, themes, as you're writing, new themes pop up and you change
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
Um, so any plans for the movie at the moment?
I'm submitting it to film festivals. I guess with a movie like this, you'd normally just put it on YouTube, but I'm just going to see what happens with film festivals. And then by the end of the year, at the latest, I'll stick it up on either YouTube or Vimeo or something.
Great. Okay. So we will announce that when it happens. And we do have time for a final question that Giles always likes to ask. So
Well, I know you've moved around a little bit, but what would you say is your hometown as you care to define it? And can you recommend a restaurant there?
I've lived in Seattle more years than I've lived in Corning. No way, I'm gonna say Corning because I thought of a restaurant, Emilio's Pizza in Corning.
Elio's Pizza and Corn. All right. Well, thank you kindly. We do like to get tips whenever we possibly can from the people we talk to. So thank you.
um you're in Seattle. We just have a minute, but it, it, it you're in Seattle. So
Right.
is it Oregon? Oregon's the one that legalized all drugs, right? Or is it
I think
Washington?
Seattle did briefly. I don't know where they're at now, but I mean, they're basically legal.
I was just reading an article the other day about kind of controversies that are going on with open air drug markets in the Pacific Northwest, and I
I'm
wondered
holding drugs in my hand right now.
if, well, I'm sure pot is legal.
That's what I'm holding.
I
Um,
was gonna say that explains the unmarked background you got here. We have no idea where you could possibly be.
Mushrooms are becoming legal too, so.
Yeah, yeah.
But we do have just a few seconds, so we're going to say goodbye, and Giles and I will be back before this.
Yeah, thank you very much. It was great chatting with you, Zeb.
Thanks.